Everybody, and welcome to Knife Skills Part 2. Today we're going to work on different cuts for leafy greens. So I have an assortment, different things here. Some things are green vegetables, not quite leaves, but all the same. We want to show how to do that. So the first thing I have here are collard greens. I took a little bit of the stem off because I wanted to just test the sharpness of this particular knife. This one is a Hitari, and that's another Japanese knife. I don't use it as much other than for like special things. If I'm teaching, like a class, oftentimes I'll use that because it's a little bit more high maintenance. And here's another collard green. So you notice that it might have like little imperfections in the leaf. Honestly, if something's grown organically, it's nice to see these little holes because it means that something was chewing on it. If you don't see those little holes, then you have to actually question whether or not it is organic. So the first thing you want to do, leafy greens are interesting because, like it really is the shape almost like of a tree here. And you can just like follow the way things grow. So ideally what you would want to do here, and you can do the same for mustard green, you're just going to take your knife and kale and you're going to go along that edge right there. And that takes the stem out. So we'll do that one more time. So for these little guys here, I usually clean that up. Take some of that off. I'll put that over here in our leaf pile. Again, you're just going to start at the top here where it's going to be a little bit more fibrous, and you're just going to run your knife right down the edge, just like that. And then again, on the other side, you can cut in. It's actually harder to do slow than it is to do quick. But there's the stem, nicely cleaned and trimmed. And being the crazy person that I am, I do like to keep it completely clean like that. Then I take the leaf and I finish off the top like that. So you have two halves. These halves can go back on a plate. And the stems are very similar to a root vegetable. So you're just going to place this here. And usually I just go with like the whole curve of the stem. So this works fine like this. And I start from the top and I'm just gonna go along the side. And this stem is pretty tender, so I can keep them a little bigger. I wouldn't go chunky if I were you. I would go a little bit more on the elongated side, because oftentimes, especially good vegetables here, the stem can be fibrous. But this is a pretty good stem. You can see when it gets a little bit white here, that indicates that it might be a little bit more fibrous than, like ideally that you want. Or up top here, it's pretty green. So that's going to be tender. This is questionable, but still we'll try to use it. Then again, and then the stems go off to the side. And I keep them in their pile. Usually I like little Pyrex dishes because that separates things really well when you're doing small things. When you're doing larger things, then you guys have seen me use the metal prep bowl. I like them a lot. Okay, so here you have either side, and what I like to do, if you would picture this bigger, is I pair the sizes together because you can cut more than one at the same time. And you're just going to line this up like this. Now obviously this leaf is a little bit longer, so what I do is I just take my knife, and I want it to be about that thick, and you can do the same here. And then you can just take your sides here, put them together, and then you're just going to go along the angle. there. So the little smaller pieces, one cut here. Works better when everything's the same size, but you're just going along these little veins here as they grow. And everything's relatively the same size, the same thickness. So here again, when you go to this side, then I flip this over and I'll start here. And again, two, put them together like this, flip it around, and we'll go the way. And because this had this little piece and I didn't want to make it smaller, but you can always go back and you can correct that. That's not a problem. Kale is a little bit different because it has like the curly pieces, and you can literally, with a kale stem, you could go and take your knife and go right along the whole edge here. Do not have any kale in the house. I'm not a big kale eater in the summertime. I prefer it in the fall and the winter because it likes colder weather. In the summertime, for me, my taste, kale just gets a little too fibrous. So I don't think it's as delicious, and sometimes too like a little bit bitter. So sorry I don't have any kale in the house. But the next thing we'll work on is Napa cabbage. So same thing here. You want to flip it over and start from the underside. And I take that out and that, just like that. And this can go here. You can flip it over then. This down. But you can even see the little lines here too, the little white pieces. So we're basically just following the way the vegetable grows. It's pretty simple. And then this, I usually take and cut small pieces, or you could bring that in half and then the idea is that you keep the white part the same width. So if I spread it all that apart, it's relatively similar and will cook more evenly. Put that here. You always want to separate your tops from your bottoms, because they have different cooking times. The bottoms need a little bit more cooking, where the top part requires a little bit less. The whole idea when you're making these leafy greens is that you want to try to maintain, usually it's done in a quick vegetable, with the exception of if it would be in a soup. And the idea too is that you want a nice fresh crunch. So if you're blanching something, it should be crunchy. If you're steaming something, it should be crunchy. If it's sauteing something quickly, it should also be crunchy. Again, your one exception might be Southern style collard greens, where everything's cooked a little bit longer, and you can do kale that way too. It's really like a delicious dish. Here we have some dandelion greens. These are really, really super easy to cook. Now, if you were here and you felt this, that's kind of like working on a little flimsy, and I just got these. These were just picked. I purchased these at the farmer's market. So what I'm going to do is, a lot of these flimsy pieces, this one not so much, but the little ones are definitely flimsy. I'm going to take that off, and I'm just going to put that in the compost pile, simply because that's just gonna, you can cook that for quite some time, and it's just gonna be super chewy. You're not gonna have a good time chewing that up. And then also potentially a little bit stringy. So that's not very delicious. So same thing here. This is very easy. Taking the bottoms and the tops, and I just like kind of like make simple cuts just like this. And again, you want to separate the top from the bottom. And those are dandelion greens. Next, we're going to work on some baby bok choy. This is one of my little homegrown plants, the top leaves. Again, this is very simple and has like lots of little cute little lines here and that for you to follow. So think of those lines as, you know, like your roadmap. So again, you're going to take this stem out. You're going to go, this is small because it's a baby bok choy. And you're just going to go along the side like that. I take this right down the center. And here, because of the size of the leaf, I would just do 2 cuts. And very simply go in here. This knife is really super sharp. It sticks to the board somewhat. But if I was going faster, it wouldn't really do that. Here again. And we'll do the And then next we'll do some scallions. It's another one that came from the community garden. And the leaves started to get like really like funky, as do sometimes like the outer leaves here. So if this begins to get a little slimy, oftentimes in the store you will get like some very, very slimy leaves. To preserve the vegetable, you just want to peel that back. And clean your scallions up from time to time if you don't get a chance to, you know, like use the whole bunch throughout the week. Even so, I think it's good practice to kind of keep it clean. So these are some fairly wild roots here that I probably wouldn't use, but things like this can very easily be used in soups or even dishes where you would dice them very, very finely. So I'll just give you a few little cuts. You know, we're talking like that, where they're literally minced, but I don't want to waste all the little roots. This is so fine, I can't even see it. I'm going to put it with the rest of my tops there. If this gets really big, what you can do is you can make bigger cuts and use that, actually cook that directly into a soup, miso soup, shoyu soup. That's, you know, perfectly fine to use, because if it's a little bit more flimsy and fibrous, then you wouldn't necessarily want to use it as a garnish. So for garnish, again, if you're not using the whole scallion, then oftentimes what I'll do is I'll take some from the top, or here, you're just gonna do very fine. Sorry folks, I can't do this as slow as it gets. So very fine little cuts like that. And you get like the shape, the ring size piece. If you want to get into the white, then again, it's not ideal to do this, but I'm doing this for demonstration purpose. Because usually, you know, I will use a whole scallion. I like a lot of chopped scallions, but here again, I don't like them too long, but I do like a little bit of the slight angle. The slight angle is so that you get a little bit of what grows towards the top and what grows to the bottom. And all that would ideally be used as garnish. Garnish for your miso soup or your shoyu soup. Even some type of like, you know, like other like vegetable soups. Wouldn't necessarily use a scallion on a creamy pureed sweet vegetable soup, because the scallion could be a little bit pungent, and I don't think it adds to the flavor of a pureed sweet vegetable soup, because ideally you want your pureed sweet vegetable soup to be sweet. So something like, like sauteed leeks are a nice addition to a pureed sweet vegetable soup. Some people like green nori flakes, just kind of the different things like that. And then here we have a zucchini. So this is going to be, sorry folks, I used part of it, but I always start from the stem end. And again, I just wanted to show a few cuts. So again, you're going to go in on a slight angle. And usually I'll take this down the middle like that. So if you want just a half round, then you would give it a cut like that. And depending on what you're cooking, if you're blanching, you might want to keep this smaller. If you're doing a stew, then you might want something a little bit chunkier like that. Zucchini's delicious in stew. If you're doing a pasta dish, this could be small like this. If you're doing a longer steam thing, then it could be chunkier. If you want to get a quarter round, then just simply take it like that, down the middle, and then you have a quarter round cut. So that's our zucchini. So obviously yellow summer squash would be the same. And then finally today, last leafy green, which is really a round vegetable, we have broccoli. So this is another nice little homegrown broccoli. And what I do here, I'm not going to cut the whole thing up. I don't, again, want to waste it. Ideally, you should be cutting and using your vegetable right away, because when you leave it like this, then what happens is it starts to lose a little bit of its vitality. So I don't like to pre-cut things. But here you can take off the bottom part. I should have just taken off the very bottom at first. And what I do is I go around. I know some people might want to eat that, but I tend to like to take that peel off. I'll just compost it because I don't find that to be very delicious. I find that to be just way too fibrous. So then I get a piece like this, and you can see here, there's a little bit of the fiber, so I'll take that off too. Once you get down to the green, it's going to be nice and tender. And then I'll just cut that in half, just like that. Again, take that down more. These guys can be cooked if you like it. Goes to the compost pile. Oops. A little bit more. Do that, or if you have a different size stem, you could always go in on the angle too. So then you have your nice broccoli crown here. And here again, it depends on what you're cooking and the size of piece that you want. So if you're making a Mediterranean style saute where you're steaming something first and then adding oil to it and, like folding it over into the oil, then you might want to keep these chunks bigger. You might want the bigger floret, like, for example, you can go in the end and you get like this whole beautiful floret. So here again, we'll go in this angle. This is similar to broccoli. You can do this with a cauliflower too. Cauliflower, it's not as noticeable, where here, you can really see the individual little stalks. And we'll turn it over and now you might say, well, what if I'm blanching something and I don't want a piece that's that big? Well, if you're blanching something, then you can just go in, and obviously you can blanch something that big if you want to. It'll be like really super crunchy, but you can also just take it and bring down the center like that, and then I like to just give it a pull. That way you lose a little bit of the flower part. And those two pieces are relatively similar in size. So here again, going in on the stem side, and you're pulling it apart, and you have two sides of the flower. So here we have our green vegetables, and I hope you enjoyed this class, and hope you get a lot out of this, and just makes your life more simple and your cooking more efficient. Thank you.